All right, so it's time for a pro tip lecture. And in this lecture, we're going to cover one of my personal favorite tips. And it's something that I do for nearly every model that I build. And we're going to learn all about creating a dedicated measure table. So it's a common best practice in Power BI to create a dedicated table that's used to store your explicit measures. It helps you stay organized, find measures quickly, and provides tools to group related measures into folders. And creating a dedicated measures table is super easy, and there's actually two different ways that you could approach building it. So the first way is you can use the Enter Data button from the Home tab to create a new table, add a new name, click OK, and you're done. The nice thing about this approach is that it's loaded into the data model and it's actually visible from within the query editor. So you're creating it in the front end and it's actually loaded into the back end as well. Another option is to create the table using a bit of DAX code in table constructors. This approach provides the same exact outcome, except that the table is not visible within the query editor. So let's head over to Power BI and we'll check this out for ourselves. Starting off here, I actually want to create the first table using DAX. Right, so I'm going to head over to my data view, and from the table tools menu here, right, I want to create a new table. So this opens up our formula bar here. And again, similar to the other DAX measures and calculated columns, we're prompted here, right? But except for a measure or a column name, this is our table name. So let's call this measure table, and I'm going to do in parentheses DAX equals, and then here is where we're going to use our table constructors. So there's a few different ways that you can create tables of data in Power BI using DAX, and table constructors is one of those ways. So what we're going to do is we're going to open with our curly bracket, and we're just going to add in two quotes. Basically that returns a blank or no value. And then we're going to end our curly bracket, right? So those are our table constructors. So basically what we're saying here is just create a blank table, right? It's a single row, single column table with no values contained in it, right? So all we're doing here is just creating a placeholder. And on the right-hand side here, we collapse these. You can see we have this new measure table with a single value column. So again, we've got this one column table called measure table. Now let's head back to the report view. And this time I'm going to use the enter data option, right? So we've got our little dialog window here, and we're going to name this the same way, measure table, right? Except this time I'm not going to add in DAX after. We don't need to touch anything with the values here within the columns. Again, we just want a single column, single row table. We'll click load. And right, you can see that it's a little bit of a different process there. It actually worked through adding it into the data model. And over on the right-hand side, we have our measure table with column 1. You can see our measure table DAX with a value. If we go back to our data view, again, both of these tables have very similar structures. So if I go back, transform data to head into the query editor, once this loads, we're only going to see the version of the measure table that was created using the enter data option, right? So down at the bottom here, we have a single column table that was created as part of that transformation. So I really just wanted to show you here that only the table that's created using the enter data option is added into the backend or the query editor of Power BI. So we can close out of here and head back. My personal preference is to use the enter data option. So I'm going to right click on our table here. I'm going to delete the DAX version from our model. Perfect. So now we're only left with the measure table version. The whole purpose of this is that we need to start adding measures into this table. So if we come down to the sales data table where we have our order quantity measure, if we select this, remember that you can use these structure settings here and you can assign these measures to different tables. Right now it lives in the sales data table, but we can move it to the measure table. All right, so we've successfully moved this measure. The next step is if you click on column and then delete the column 1 value from this table, watch what happens. Pay close attention to the symbol here. Look what happened. This actually updates to a brand new symbol type or a table type, right? We've got our standard tables here, and now we've got this kind of like calculated table or calculator icon. So when you have a table that is dedicated only to housing your measures, you get this brand new icon. And you can see that we have our order quantity measure contained within it. So the last thing to call out here is after you've created this measure table and you've added some of your measures into it, if you head in to the data view from your measure table here and you select one of the measures, you have this display folder option. So this is where you could start typing in something like, volume metrics. Right? And what this does is it creates a brand new folder called volume metrics that contains our order quantity. And as we start adding other measures into our data model, we can then further kind of group them and categorize them as needed. So for now, we're going to delete this display folder and we're just going to leave this as is, as a single independent measure within the table. All right, so this is a seriously powerful technique that'll help you and others using your data model stay organized.